exactly on your note, I don't think we know the implication of all this. Exactly like you said. Let's talk a royal example. You can summon a car to your house in the airport. 100 years ago, you literally had to be the president of the United States to have that service, right?
Yeah.
So now you extrapolate that. I think last number I saw, Uber had 150 million users. It will end up having 1 billion, right? So now extrapolate this all these tools for dating, for consuming content. I do not think we are ready or know what it means to give that many people that much access to dopamine that quickly. What does that mean? All right, listeners, we're getting right into this because Bilal's not here. It's going to be a disaster zone. Bilal has done every single episode of NIA. This is his first episode not doing it. It's just Trung and Jack today. I can't even get the intro right? But Jack, what are you drinking? What beverage are you drinking, consuming right now?
I'm on
how is your Tuesday morning going?
Mate, it's good. I'm on the cold brew from the local coffee shop. Took the car for a service this morning. Feeling very accomplished. Checking off the domestic chores. I got my family in town. So
family's back in town. Okay, so yeah. Are they monopolizing the Heal with Heat sauna?
Mate, nobody's used it yet, but I've been offering it up. They certainly are interested in it, and I'll report back.
You got to tell them that it's clean daily. I think that's the hesitation here.
I will pitch the benefits after this.
Well, before we get in, let's talk about what we're going to talk about today, because I had a couple more questions for Jack, because I know people have been asking, is like, can we do some more Jack stuff? They'd like to know about Jack, okay? So, but before that, we're going to talk about OpenAI and Sora. That was the big thing that dropped last week. People are losing their mind. We'll talk about this culture report, the state of culture by music historian, a previous friend of and guest of the pod, Ted Joya, legend, by the way. His Substack, The Honest Broker, is a must read. He's basically talking about how the future media is looking pretty grim in the sense that we're going to be fully distracted. We already are, but he's extrapolating. What else was there? We'll talk about, Jack's got a bit about the biggest NFT sale ever. I know we still got a lot of...
Not ever, but for a while, yeah.
For a while. Okay, so and maybe tee up, is this a sign of more bullish crypto to come? And we'll finish off if we have time. Well, we will definitely have time for Monster Beverage, the top performing stock in the last 3 decades. It's fucking mind-blowing. Think about it. A good one. And if we have time, again, this one will be if we have time, we'll talk about no one hangs out anymore and what that means. And we can talk about as parents. Okay, before we get into Sora and OpenAI, Jack, we're going to talk to you about getting stuff done. You mentioned you got a couple things done today, all right? I think people want to know, what is Jack Butcher's work function? Like, what is it? Where have you accomplished the most work? Is it you wake up and you tell Celia, is like, listen, I'm doing 12 hours of work today. Apologies. I'm not going to be around. Or is it you're just picking away? Like, what is the Jack's most productive work?
Early mornings is my best time for sure.
Okay.
Used to be late at night, but now it's early mornings, probably like 5 to 7 or 5 to 8 in the morning.
Oh, you're up early, dude.
Not regularly, but that's when I have something I have to do, or like I can't get back to sleep, I'll get up, and those will be the best hours. Just like before, there's something about it, man. Before the world is awake, you're not like thinking about replying to stuff or whatever else, even though that's like an arbitrary constraint. During waking hours, it just feels different. But now I'm gone really other days of the like 10 or 12 hour straight stretch. It's a lot of couple hours of inspiration here or there. Trying to figure out what's next on that. Might get a space this year, figure out a little physical retreat.
Away from the home?
Yeah, but we'll see.
You'll appreciate this. So I'd like to throw your thoughts on this. I love how you said the 5 to 7, because you look at any Fortune 500 CEO, they literally say that. I mean, they really have to do that, right? They're like, get to the gym at 4:30, get to the office at 5, try to accomplish anything before the world starts. freaking distracted.
You're just in response mode after that point. Yeah.
Exactly, right? Well, I mean, I've rarely have had what you had, but I know that when it happens, it's magical. Like, I'll wake up at 5 a.m. in bed, even just in bed with my wife, and like, I'm just like, don't want to wake her up, so I'll just read. It's the most productive reading I'll ever do, right? Because there's no new articles, none of the news wires have hit, and like, you're just reading. But this is what John Mayer, the musical artist, said on Rick Rubin's podcast, patron saint of this podcast, of NIA podcast, but his own podcast. He talked about sweat pant mode. So he's like, in his creative life, just what John Mayer is saying, is like, sometimes you're just letting it happen, right? You're not forcing the creative act to happen. But when you've cracked the code, when you know what the rest of it looks like, he's like, I'm putting on my sweatpants, clearing the calendar. I'm working for 72 hours straight, telling my team they need to work for 70 hours straight. And he goes, every single song that I've made that has mattered comes from one of these like 72-hour pushes. And he's like, he's just saying, how does that
There's a Navalism on that, right? The inspiration is perishable, act on it immediately. That's definitely true. Yep. You know what's weird, like, about being, there's some tension in it in the, like, quote unquote art world where, like, you have these periods of, like, production where maybe 2 or 3 months, this happened at the beginning of last year, where you just locked in, and then you have like 2 or 3 months of your brain defragging all of that, and then it comes back and you get hit with something else. And yeah, I've always regretted like trying to artificially limit the output in the moment like that, right? Where you're like, oh, I could pace this out, or I should do it in a month's time or 2. It's gone. Like, by the time that you think you can come back to that idea later on, there's what is the I don't know who to credit this to, but the idea of like push and pull, and when like you feel like you're forcing any creative output, I don't know. There's an argument to be made that like the really good stuff is found through just the brute force too, right? It's like,
well, let's talk about behind you right now. There's a Checks, right? You just had a second kid when you started Checks. You easily could have just been like, you know what? Let's just pause this. Let me get the first month out of the way, right? It's like first for people, for parents, and then if people don't have parents. I mean, you don't have kids yet. This is a sentiment that I've had with all my friends. I believe that I've shared this with Jack, and we've kind of agreed. Listen, that first month is insane. Yeah, it is absolute insanity, and it has to do with biology. There's something in parenting called the 4th trimester. And basically what happens with humans, a lot of people listening may already know this, but like the human brain versus the rest of the body is much bigger relative to other mammals, right? And it's obviously we have a lot of cognitive abilities to do really smart stuff and also really dumb things. But the whole point is that the brain is so much bigger than any other relative animal that we have to leave the female body, the mother, before you can't leave anymore. Like your cranium is too big for the vaginal canal. So like you're actually out of the body before you can function, which is why they call it the 4th trimester. So obviously 3 trimesters is 9 months. The 4th trimester is the last 3 months where you should still be developing in the womb. Like you look at some of these other mammals that get birthed out, like the rhinos, they're on their legs, right? They're hunting down like within an hour of being awake. Like a baby cub is like already like snatching other animals, right? So something to think about. But to Jack's point, the reason I bring it up is like that first 3 months, insanity. First weeks, insanity. Jack created Checks during one of these periods. So I think it's just one of those things, right? It's like it's like the Navalism, I guess. That is the best example of Navalism. You struck when totally objectively the worst time possible.
Right, the worst time, yeah, for sure. And then, after that...
Shout out to Celia.
Yeah, exactly, man. Every podcast should open with a tribute, because that's like the only way it would have happened. Yeah, it's don't know, the momentum thing, I've felt that in every different type of venture or focus. It's like momentum is the most precious thing in the world, man. It's like the compounding works in both directions, where like even the daily habit of the visualized value, the visualized value style illustrations that were Instagram and Twitter to begin with, like this is not new information for anybody. So the more you do it, the easier it gets, right? And then if you miss one day, it's like, 2 days later, I'll do it. And then it's 4 days, then it's 6 days, and then a month has gone by, right? Versus like keeping it this habitual thing where you just like your brain is kind of able to access that set of functions or whatever it is that powers that so much more easily. Exactly. Yeah. So you're giving up a little bit of that too. And I'm sure this is like how musicians think about it or how they experience it. It's like, it feels different, like sitting down to write a song than like covering, writing a lesson about subject matter that you already understand or know, right? It's different than like trying to pull something out of the ether and turn it into something interesting.
Well, dude, I'll give you a perfect example of what you're saying for just my life, and I think maybe more relatable to a lot of people that listen, is like writing a recommendation a lot of people get told when they're like, hey, I want to start a newsletter, is like, just do a roundup of what you've read. Because a roundup is infinitely more easy, to Jack's point, than building a new idea from scratch.
Yeah.
Even though it might end up being the same words, like you might do a roundup of 5 articles you read. The mental blocker to doing that is almost nothing compared to like, hey, I'm going to attack a topic from scratch. It might also be only 2,000 words, but you will be shocked at how much more difficult it is to do cognitively. I think, and the last thing I'll say about this is, I know we got to jump in this Sora stuff, but kind of related, is like, people are just lazy. Humans are lazy. We want to be lazy. That's what you're going up against, right? Is like, humans are cognitive misers. It's because the brain takes up 20 to 30% of all of our body's energy. So you actually just want to be lazy, which is totally fair. And I totally get it. And this is why I think to Jack's, what Jack's mentioned about momentum is, it's why when you have that, you just gotta grab it and just ride the bull, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%, man. It's all seasons. It's all like, there are no straight lines in any of this stuff either, which is a hard thing to trust when you're on the bottom of those lines sometimes, but they come back around.
Never say this is pointless.
Yeah, sine waves.
All right, so we'll get into the meme of the week here. We'll share screen. So a little inside baseball with some folks. I know some people over at Will Smith's media company, Westbrook, and they sent me messages like, yo, can you want to throw this video up? Will's not super active on Twitter. I don't think he even has a Twitter account, an official one. But so for people that don't know, what's on the screen right now for the listeners is the Growing Daniel, funniest Twitter, man. He's so funny, dude. How funny is Growing Daniel?
Very funny.
He had one of the best tweets I saw. So Sora is the text-to-video model from OpenAI. I buried the lead there again. But Growing Daniel had this tweet. He goes, Will Smith eating spaghetti. So for people who don't get that reference, is a year ago when a lot of these text-to-video models came out, the running joke was everybody was trying to do a video of Will Smith eating spaghetti, and they are just grim. It's just like uncanny valley, just terrifying, right? Nightmare feel. And but Growing Daniel wrote, Will Smith eating spaghetti is like the 4-minute mile of AI videos.
Nice.
It's like once that's cracked, it's like it's over, right?
Yeah.
So a year ago, so the video I'm going to show here is, it's the top part of this video. So Will Smith posted this. He leaned into the memes because when Sora released this AI model, everyone was asking, okay, cool, like very cool demonstrations. So some of the videos that were prompted, they're 60-second videos, would be like walking in a Tokyo street. Now, I can ask Rafa, our super producer, to post that up. It's like, it's a video of a woman walking in Tokyo. It looks very realistic. But for about 30 seconds. Another one was like puppies in snow. Again, looks extremely realistic until if you look a little bit closer, which we'll talk about, you can see something's up. But just from a lazy scrolling eye, like imagine you're scrolling your feed, you'd be like, oh, damn, that's real. Mm-hmm. But the point is, everybody's like, okay, this is cool. Show us the Will Smith video. Because, as I'll show here for the listeners, the Will Smith video from a year ago, which is the top of this frame, is grim. So Will Smith lenient to the meme, and yesterday, which would be Monday, he made a video of him eating spaghetti, and he's like joking that it's now what AI is a year later. But here's the video.
Oh wow, he really went with the theme.
Like how terrifying is that upper video?
Mate, crazy. And good for him, man. This is on Instagram or something.
Yeah, it's on his Instagram. 63 million followers.
Wow.
Some of the comments when I posted the video, hysterical. Keep my wife's spaghetti out of your mouth, which is like a reference to Will Smith.
He stayed in the news, man. He knows what he's doing.
He knows how to ride meme waves. Do you remember when he did Drake, when one of Drake's songs blew up? And Kiki, do you know me?
Yeah.
You remember? Then Will Smith won the entire. Everybody's doing the dance. He climbs on a bridge in Hungary, in Budapest, does a dance. And then Drake's like, okay, this is the best one. Like Drake calling out Will Smith, right? Obviously, they know each other. Will Smith is a hip hop pioneer. Okay, enough of me talking. Meme of the week. You saw Sora, instant first reactions.
Crazy, obviously, unbelievable vertical progress just in terms of like the quality of it, and I guess the difficulty you would assume, or the amount of time you would assume it would take to get to this level of fidelity. I read a good tweet about it. It was like, I don't know, what's interesting about this stuff playing out is like it becomes like this superpower that everybody has, therefore it's like not a superpower anymore, right? I think the biggest or most interesting thing about it, and maybe the most like challenging thing for them building a product, is how do you protect against like spoof videos and, you know, deep fake stuff. And I'm sure that's all like baked into how they will launch it. But that to me is like generating stock footage or whatever else is just, it's fascinating for like 10 seconds. And then you're like, oh, that's just like that's the new bar, that's the new plateau. And some of this stuff is like, it's so technically impressive, but it hasn't actually like in my work, I haven't found that many use cases for this stuff, really. And even making the comparison between AI generated stuff and handmade stuff within some of the collections that I've been working on the last couple years, there is a distinct preference for the handmade stuff, and people can tell what's,
what do you mean, from like
quote unquote
the audience,
real and not.
like the market, basically?
The market, yeah.
So why don't you tease out a bit when you're saying distinct preference? What do you mean?
Well, so one of the projects that I launched last year is called Opepen. I think we talked about it a little bit on here. And originally it was a play on the OpenAI thing, Opepen AI. And it was going to be this single silhouette that was reinterpreted 16,000 different ways through like an image model. You could still recognize the underlying shape and silhouette of this thing. But as AI capabilities got greater and greater and greater, it would kind of catalog that journey.
Why 16,000?
That's how many tokens there were minted of an open edition.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
So we kind of retroactively modifying the artwork to comment on the evolution of AI image making. And what we ended up doing was dicing it up into 200 different releases, thinking that there'd be 200 sort of chapters in this story of the evolution of image making. And like this Sora thing would be a perfect example of a technology that you would kind of memorialize in this collection. But I think it was the second set we did with Stable Diffusion. I was obsessed with it. I did like probably 5,000-6,000 outputs myself.
Dude, where did this collection end up going for all the work you put in?
They're still on my computer. There ended up being 6 images that made it into the like actual collection that are now on Ethereum. But I did all of these iterations because my original plan was to make 16,000 unique outputs by going through this process to kind of, you know, comment on this idea of the labor involved with actually making something good with AI, because obviously there's taste, there's prompting, it gets like really quickly into this philosophical discussion of what is an AI artwork. Because even since then, the stuff I did with Red Bull last year, I used ChatGPT to write the code. But if you ask anybody if that's an AI artwork, they would say no. It's because it's not an AI generated image per se. It's like one step removed. So I don't know. All of the conversations around this stuff are like, I don't know, they've gotten less interesting to me than I thought they would be a year ago, where it feels like it's just becoming this like corporate stock footage machine, and that's like the way they likely will monetize this in the most effective way too. I have a friend that sells software for Adobe, and all their clients want is like models that are trained on all of the stock footage that they've ever shot, so they can just churn out more and more.
Like that's for all the best case use scenarios that we talk about. Like this is what it comes down to. It's like a cheaper Getty's images.
Right. Yeah. And I think like it really starts to highlight like where the talent actually is, like the ability to write a story, tell a joke. Like everybody is kind of catching up with this idea that image making has been commodified in some way. It's just, I thought we would spend more time talking about it, or I would personally be more interested in it. But I do find it like shockingly like, oh, that's kind of cool, and then just move on from it. It's a thing that I thought it would just like envelop me, but it hasn't yet. Anyway,
I mean, as a practitioner, which you are, I think that's very telling and something everyone should take note on. So my thought on it is, I totally agree with you. So Marquez Brownlee, MKBHD, obviously super YouTuber, he made a video about Sora. So he said two things. He was amazed by it just by the progress, right? He's like, he kept in this 12-minute video, he kept on going back to like, guys, I have to let you know, a year ago we had Will Smith spaghetti. He kept on saying it, right?
Right.
This is what it looked like a year ago. It was Will Smith spaghetti, like freaky, creepy nightmare feel. Mm-hmm. And then now, look, you can still see. So before, I'll give you one thought on his video, which was very profound. He said the exact same thing you said. He says, I think the first people that will lose jobs will be stock video creators. And he said, because he pointed out specifically to a shore shot of San Francisco Bay. And he's like, which is one of the demos that OpenAI gave. He's like, imagine you had a choice between this or paying a drone flight camera guy, having an editor team. You're going to go with the Sora option 100 times out of 100. But he's like extrapolating. So in his mind, I think it's similar to you. It's like amazement, but also just like not enveloped by it. Yeah. But he's like, okay, what's this going to be like in 5 years though? He's like, what is the fidelity going to be like in 5 years? Will the physics...
What's funny is it just like pushes out like where the actual creativity is almost. Like,
yeah,
it does, like, in my mind, it does increase the quality of work or the originality in work that people will have to do, right? It's like the fact that there's like multiple companies shooting stock footage of San Francisco Bay is the most dumb, such a fucking stupid waste of time. And I used to be in that business, right? Where it's like, oh, we need to go out for B-roll. We need to call the police, get the road closed. We need to ask for permission from the FAA to fly a drone up here to get this like nondescript 5-second clip of some water and some cliffs. Like, why are we doing this? Because it's cheaper than going to Getty Images and licensing this and getting a lawyer to figure out how many times it's been viewed and then going back for the license after that. And there's like content creation did become this like just ridiculous, nonsensical bubble. But also the weird thing to me is, does the ability to generate that really easily almost stop people from including it in the work that they make, you know? Like, I don't, like the standard car ad, right? Where you have all the different terrains and the car goes through this one and that one, this one. If it costs like $100 to generate the footage for that, car companies are still going to want to spend $2 million on a spot. So what are they going to do differently? It's like, it just moves the goalposts in my mind way, way, way up, which hopefully is a good thing. You know, like the amount of creativity that is really not operating at the edge, you know, it's just like production and, you know, it almost reminds me of like hospital administration. It's like all of the stuff that we still have people doing that we really don't need them doing. Does this push people towards like being more creative and kind of taking some of the atomic limits off of stuff, like the 5 days you would have spent getting the clips of the trees and the water. Now you spend those 5 days doing something that is truly unique or more creative or more interesting. So we'll see how it plays out.
And you're saying this as like you said, somebody that used to do this, right? You're not throwing stone. You used to do this.
No, not at all. Like I'm saying, like some of the most brutal work I've ever done is like I did a 40-day road trip shooting a car commercial across the States to produce like 90 pieces of content probably, right? And now I haven't been in that line of work for a few years, so I'm probably overestimating how much AI would reduce the amount of work that had to be done there. But so much of that was like completely commoditized, and it's more like driven by the legal situation too, where you can't just use footage that you find, right? That footage exists, and I know what would look great cut together, but you have to physically go and capture it with your own equipment in order to be able to legally use it. So this definitely changes that. But at the same time, it devalues all of that stuff because it's so much cheaper to generate. Like the beautiful shot of this, like Mercedes used to shoot all these spots on the salt lakes in Nevada, like this like incredible aerial.
The beautiful vista. Yeah, I know which one you're talking about.
Unbelievable production to do that. And I don't think we're there on like the AI generative side yet, but can't be far off. And if people know that you can get that from a prompt in 30 seconds, that's not like
it's no longer
wowing
special.
The consumer, you know?
Yeah. Well, here's a great example. Jurassic Park does the first real CGI. I mean, like Terminator 2 does, but you see that, you're like, oh my God. Like imagine watching Terminator 2 the first time in the 90s. You're like, this is 1991. You're like, oh my God, T-1000? But like you said, every Marvel Star Wars movie now is 95% CGI. It's table stakes. It means nothing. It doesn't sell anything, right? So this is like a version of that.
Yeah, I do. I think that used to be something that you would go to the cinema for. I was like, I have to see this in the cinema because of the level of special effects, and even that, the bar on that now to me is like the Christopher Nolan, you know, Inception level, like that kind of stuff. To me, that's like the edge where you could not prompt one of those scenes from Inception. You know, you could get the version of the city that has been captured a million times by a lot of people, but it does push the bar for true creativity out.
Well, the running joke with that one, you know how he loves practical effects, like he's trying to make everything as real as possible. It's like, man, I can't believe Christopher Nolan, they just rolled up Paris like that, man. How did he get the permits?
That's good.
What I was gonna say is, let me just end on two notes on the Sora stuff. Is so Dan Shipper from Every wrote a great article. I highly recommend people read it. He explained how Sora works, and I'm gonna butcher it, but I think it's quite interesting because you had just mentioned your 16,000 token project. But for people that don't know, the way that the ChatGPT works, the text generative model, is basically it swallowed the internet, all this text, and it's basically guessing the next word based on the context of the previous words. And the way that Sora works is the equivalent of a token, which is what is being output in ChatGPT for text, is called a patch. So the patch is the video version of a word token. And the patch is basically taking samplings of that scene, the frame prior, and based on ingesting whatever they ingested, probably a lot of video on the internet. And this is actually why Google has a massive potential data advantage because of YouTube. No one's got more, like, I don't know what the stat is. I think it's like 100 hours of video uploaded every second on YouTube. But that training data is insane. But back to OpenAI. The videos are guessing the next patch, basically, which is why when you watch them, weird things still happen. Like people disappear. Some physics are just impossible, like the people movements. But what's interesting is that, so again, read Dan's article. We'll link to it in the show notes. Is it's kind of figuring out physics without this predetermined parameters placed into the model. It's kind of just figuring out from this freaking transformer magic that's been happening with text and with DALL-E prior. But that was just kind of like the inside baseball, which I completely ruined and how it's done. The other thing I'd say is you probably saw this tweet, which I think is relevant to what we're talking about. So this one, you probably saw this. Let me know if you saw this. For listeners, it's from Matt Turk, venture capitalist. He's got some banger tweets. He goes, a movie watching experience. In 2005, you go to the movie theater. In 2015, you stream Netflix. In 2025, you ask an LLM plus Sora to create a new season of Narcos to watch, but have it take place in Syria with Brad Pitt, Mr. Beast, and Travis Kelce in leading roles. That went super viral. The idea being that you can just create your own TV shows now or extend the ones that you love like instantly.
By the way, I'm gonna call bullshit on that.
Okay,
I don't think that's gonna be a behavior, and I think like that's been sort of debunked so many times throughout like any technical innovation where it's like everybody can do this now, and it's like the idea being that the technology not existing is the reason for people not participating in that way. I don't think that's necessarily true, like not on a large scale anyway. It's like the 1% of people creating media on any network and 99% of people consuming it. I don't think these tools existing at scale change that dynamic. But the first place your brain goes to is thinking, me, myself included.
I agree with you 100%. Dude, I 100%, you nailed the key number. It's the 1%, 9%, 90% rule, right? For people who don't know this, it's 1, 9, 90. 1% of people create, 9% of people maybe comment, add a few thoughts, 90% only consume. This is like across every network, any media network. I'll give you an example. Like if you go on Amazon reviews, like I think one dude has like 50,000 reviews. It's like the book reviews, like
incredible.
Anybody that buys a book is consuming from basically one person, right? Like the decision making. And I agree with Jack entirely. The first place your mind goes, like everything's gonna be super customized. But the reality is no.
Mate, I can't even pick from a list of stuff, Like the amount of imagination required to go a step beyond and like create your own show, to me is like,
dude, I love it. I can't even pick a Netflix show to watch. Like stuff that's already pre-made for me and they're feeding me based on my past. I will be on my TV for half an hour with my wife getting into an argument about what to watch. So now we're going to make custom. Like, I agree with you. It's no chance.
You know what? I think it's more like it will follow more the pattern of the algorithm just giving you shit that makes you never look away.
Right.
It's not going to be asking you for your like shit prompts about what you think is good. It's just going to be like, hey, we know you're going to not look away from the screen if we keep feeding you X, right? The algorithm to create content.
We know you love Sopranos. We're just going to keep extending the story for you. I'll tell
you
two
things. Sopranos season 400, yeah.
Well, I'll tell you two things about it. A, that shit is so dystopian. It is so dark, man.
Yeah.
Imagine being the only person that has saw season 401 of Sopranos. You have no one to talk to. You're on your Apple Vision Pro. like between tug sessions, if we're being honest. You're in season 500. I don't think people want this, man. This is the, now we're getting to the nitty gritty of it. I love how you've just been taking the contra of everything. Jack's like, A, you know what? Amazing technology. It's not enveloping my mind. B, Jack's like, yeah, I don't think anybody's self-prompting different shows for themselves. We talked about it, cognitive misers. We're lazy people. You have to understand how lazy we are.
And you got to give the Luke Burgess hat tip too, right? You want to consume stuff that is like, has other points of contact with reality that you can share with people or talk to people about. Or, yeah, I think that is really underappreciated, that the value of media obviously is in the craft of it, the art of it, the story of it, but it's like a shared experience by definition, right? These things that multiple people can consume. Back
to something you said last week, stuck culture. You brought up the topic of stuck culture. You want to know why stuck culture is here? It's because people want stuff everyone cared about.
Right.
This is why I still make jokes about movies from the 90s. I talk about Dumb and Dumber, Gladiator, and like Lord of the Rings because I know everyone's seen them. You know what I mean? I know everyone's seen them. And like those are what people want. This is like stuck culture. To be fair to stuck culture, there's a reason it's stuck, right? Is like people want shared media,
and it's probably our echo bubble too. Like our nostalgic preferences, like the people we read the opinions of are similar ages to us, have similar, like, grew up nostalgic for the similar times, like. Kids 10 years, like there was as much commentary about stuck culture as there was people saying like, who's Usher? Like their kids, like, well, who the fuck's this? Like that, it's always going through the lens of like the people that are similar to you. The reason you're reading their stuff is because you agree with them for the most part. You're like, oh, this must be how everybody is consuming and understanding this issue. And most of the time we're just like ostrich with a head down the hole, right?
Yep, 100%. And I think this is a perfect way to segue into the next topic we teased. We'll do this one quickly. Ted Gioia, Honest Broker, wrote a State of Culture report. He's a longtime historian of music, but also used to work in consulting in Silicon Valley. So he has a nice mix of technology and culture. Very important now. So I'm going to show this screenshot. Jack, let me know if you can see it. I'll talk you through it.
I got it,
yeah. Can you see that?
Yes,
He says the rise of dopamine culture. So I'll kind of talk through this if you can just digest it and give me any thoughts you had on it. But so basically, the point that Ted's making is that if you actually look at the nature of where technology, where we spend our time is taking us, it's pretty grim in the sense of the end game here seems to be pure consumption and not a ton of creativity, kind of what Jack was alluding to, the 90% that consumes. So we'll take athletics, all right? So Ted has split this graph into three. He says there's a slow traditional culture followed by a fast modern culture followed by a dopamine culture. And this is just the trend line we're on. Okay, athletics. We used to play sports. Now we watch sports. In the next decade, we're going to gamble on sports. Okay, that's already happening, but I'm kind of giving you a timeline here. Journalism. You used to read newspapers. Now you're consuming it in all types of multimedia, and it goes towards dopamine, clickbait. So you're fighting attention, right? So everything's leading towards how do I capture the most attention, and this is where it's taking you. Because gambling, in the sports example, what's easier? To gamble to get your dopamine or to call up 5 buddies, organize a pickup game on Saturday, right? Way easier to gamble, obviously. Video goes from film to kind of streaming to reels of short videos. Music, you used to consume albums. You take your time, you consume it. You do tracks now. Now it's TikToks. Images, you view a gallery wall, you look on your phone, now you scroll on your phone. Communication, handwritten letters, voice, email, memo, and now just short text. Relationships, courtship and marriage, and then fast sexual freedom, and then now you swipe on an app. So I think what he's shown is that the friction is being taken away from everything, and because the friction is taken away, they're competing for attention way better and distraction. So I know it threw a lot there. Any thoughts on that in general?
Yeah, I mean, it's the commentary of it being like removing friction, I think is a good way to frame it, because it is basically amplifying people's underlying base desires or instincts or whatever, however you want to categorize those things. Is it's like increasing the bandwidth with which you can partake in any of that stuff. Like most people put in a situation where you choose one of those things, everything trends towards access and convenience. And you can frame that as like quality of life increasing, right? It's like, what is the, like technology, I forget the entire quote, but it's like a sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic.
Right, from magic.
Yeah, which is the like Uber summoning the driver to your door, which was a life experience that could only be accessed by royalty 200 years ago, let's say. I think you can do that basically on every single level of that chart. Like even the ability to like gamble on the outcome of a game is like, that's like a high society activity at one point, or it's like not something that you would have access to as a like normal person. Same for all the dating apps, all of that. Like that is just completely skewed the quote unquote opportunity, in the same way that like if you're a great writer in a place where nobody appreciates what you're writing about, the internet connects you to all these other people. But yeah, I don't know. I think the dopamine argument is like people have basically always been trying to do that, but now these devices just massively increase the bandwidth to getting there. And
the number of people that can do it instantly, I don't exactly on your note, I don't think we know the implication of all this. Like exactly like you said, let's talk a royal example. You can summon a car to your house in the airport. 100 years ago, you literally had to be the president of the United States to have that service, right?
Yeah.
So now you extrapolate that. I think last number I saw, Uber had 150 million users. It will end up having 1 billion, right? So now extrapolate this all these tools for dating, for consuming content. I do not think we are ready or know what it means to give that many people that much access to dopamine that quickly. Like, what does that mean? Like, what does it actually mean?
I think you just have more agency, like in every area of your life, where previously, like you may have sort of been confined to or accept the circumstances in which you are like physically limited to. And now all of these things in every category are basically breaking that apart to the degree that your individual decisions on like an hour by hour basis have a massive impact on the trajectory of your life. It's like these things can either be used for getting you closer to where you want to go or going in the absolute opposite direction. But it's just the feedback loop is so fast. Like the internet, as somebody who has a platform, right? It's like that can destroy you in 5 seconds if you send the wrong thing or say the wrong thing. Or it can be this vehicle for you to reach untold amount of people. And I think that like metaphorically applies to all of that stuff. It's like as your quote unquote quality of life increases, or the power of your technology increases, like the amount of good judgment you have to exercise in parallel with that gets more significant too. Like the ability to order a Burger King 4 times a day, and not have to move from your seat.
Dude, do you know how good the Whopper is?
Man, I love Burger King. I love Burger King.
The Whopper is such a good... The Whopper is the best burger. The Whopper is the best burger of any of the major chains. It's so good.
I'm a bacon double cheeseburger personally, Burger King.
But you've had the Whopper.
A long time ago, yeah. I have to have another one though. What is it about the Whopper that you like?
I think it's the tomato, lettuce, and the sauce. I don't know if the sauce is the same for double cheese. So, you know what? Small detour. What are your top 3 burgers? We just started this game. Let me finish my side, and then I'll let you think on it. So, number 1 for me, just based on the most I've ever eaten, it's got to be spicy chicken from Wendy's. Like, just I'm doing pure numbers.
Okay.
Spicy
I've never
chicken
had a
from
Wendy's, by the way. I have to try that.
Please try a spicy chicken and let me know what you think.
All right.
Based on your reaction to Ferrero Rocher, for people that don't know, Jack was not a fan. He had it. He said, "Meh." I think I can get you back with a spicy chicken. Okay,
chicken
spicy
sandwich, that'll hit, I'm sure. Yeah.
Number 2, just based on lifetime consumption, it's probably Big Mac. Yeah. I think that the older I got, I found the extra piece of bread a little bit unnecessary.
I'm like,
much. Dude, I'm old. I'm like, dude, do I need all these carbs? I've been taking
the bread in the middle is a little excessive.
Yeah, I'm like, I'll get a Big Mac and I'll take out the middle bread, but like make sure none of the sauce gets lost. It's so dumb. I'll take out the bread, but make sure all the onion pieces stay in the burger. Yeah. But I just want the sauce without the bread. And then the third will be, I'd just say, this one is just a Whopper. I like the Junior Whopper, by the way. I think the Whopper's too big. Yeah, Junior Whopper's nice bite size. Okay, so hit me with your top 3.
Let us know in the comments your top burgers. Yeah, I like the the bacon double cheese, the XL bacon double cheeseburger from Burger King.
Okay, I'm gonna try that.
That's a heater there, and I also like the grilled chicken BLT Chick-fil-A.
Okay.
That's a recent one. So Nashville's obviously stacked with Chick-fil-A, so I'm consuming that every now and again. And then the last one is probably, I don't know what the name of the order is, but In-N-Out, like the classic In-N-Out burger in California.
Double. Monster style, savage style, was it? Like what's the style
I think
called?
it's animal
style. Yeah. You know what? I should have included that. I will also say I kind of like Shake Shack. I kind of like the Shack burger.
Yeah.
I'll throw it in there. All right, let's pin this conversation with my wife just walked down and she just gave me the knowing you saw Jackie.
What are you doing in here?
Yeah, top 3 you know the look too, right? And then she's hearing me talk about it. She's like, dude, you saw.
I have a very important call to make.
We all have the same eyes. It's like when they see the smells walking down, so unimpressed. You've seen it. All right, so this is perfect. Let me pin with this. We'll end this section about the culture report with something that Balaji said on his podcast, the Network State podcast, which I don't know if Jack, if you had the chance to listen, you're a busy guy.
I haven't listened to it yet, no.
Yeah, so he dropped like 8 episodes. He's talking about distribution, which I know you appreciate. I mean, it's the way the actual anecdote is not something it's an awful story. It's about Ted Kaczynski and Unabomber, but Balaji is making a point. He's like, if people don't remember, Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber, was sending bomb packages to various people. I think this is I can't remember if it's the early or late 90s, earlier mid 90s. But this guy's a genius, right? Like he's in Good Will Hunting. They talk about him like he was like a Will Hunting type character, Harvard dude, and Harvard math genius. But the reason he was sending these bombs, he had a certain memo, a famous memo, the Unabomber's memo about how technology is ruining society, and he wanted one of the major newspapers, Post, NY Times, to publish it. And his way to get leverage for them to publish it, for him to get distribution, was to send bombs to people. Wow. Terrorism, right? The point that Balaji was making is like, that's how important. Like that's how important distribution is. And that was the lengths that obviously Ted Kaczynski had serious mental health problems. But like the lengths that he would go to get distribution. And the reason I bring that up though is like, you're talking about, we're dealing with where people used to have to go through that, and don't even talk about like the printing press in the 1450s, which we've talked about previously, right? The lengths people would go through. People would fight wars to get distribution. And now instantaneous for billions of people. Think about what that's doing to us. I think we can move on from, unless you had any thoughts on that before we move on to Monster Beverage, and we can call that our last section.
No, that's good. You reckon we could do it in 3 minutes, Monster?
Yeah, let's do Monster quickly. All right.
All right, go.
Well, here, why don't I do this? I'll just ask you about Monster, and you can jump off because I know you got a hard stop. What do you know about Monster Beverage?
I know that maybe I got introduced to it through Ken Block. You know, all the content they used to make with Jim Connor. It was like emerged in my life after the Red Bull thing. I would think of them as basically like copying the Red Bull media strategy.
They're the Pepsi to Red Bull's Coca-Cola.
Yeah, that's my understanding of it. And then Jim Connor, Ken Block, all of that stuff. I was obsessed with that for a long time, even though I don't think I've ever drunk a can of Monster in my life. But
I've had the white non-sugar one. Red Bull's way better in my opinion. I'm a Red Bull guy. But I'll throw you two numbers before you bounce. So you nailed it. The energy drink market's about $90 billion market a year. Red Bull's number one. It's about $50 billion of that. And then number two is Monster. What people don't know, though, Monster is a monster company. Best performing stock the last 3 decades. I'll leave you on this because you'll appreciate it. They made a monster, on pun unintended, with Coca-Cola. A huge distribution deal about a decade ago. Coca-Cola saw what Monster was doing, and they invested $2 billion for 16% of the company. So that gave it a valuation of $12 billion. Monster is now a $50 billion company.
wow.
Coca-Cola's investment went from $2 billion to $12 billion. But here's the deal. Coca-Cola swapped their drink portfolio with Monster. They gave Monster all their energy drinks. They had these random energy drinks that we probably have but never don't remember.
Right.
Monster gave Coca-Cola all their non-energy drinks, which are a bunch of juices. Have you ever had Hanson's or Peace Tea? That used to be Monsters. Monster used to be called Hanson's Natural. But anyways, let me finish with this. The distribution deal was this. Jack loves distribution. Coca-Cola, as part of this deal, would only hold Monster-related beverages as their energy drinks. So you got that global distribution. 300 countries, millions of stores only would hold Monster. What a fucking deal, man.
Crazy. And that's like only because Red Bull exists were they able to track that deal, yeah.
Exactly.
Incredible.
And so there you go. That was Coca-Cola's play. They bought the biggest. And to Jack's point about Monster copying Red Bull's playbook, Monster sponsors NASCAR. Monster sponsors all these extreme sports. So there you go, people.
And I was just to tie it back into one of the earlier topics, the imagine giving a can of Monster to a 200, a person 200 years ago. Here's a can of Monster. Like what you're able to, I don't even know how to explain it. Like the stuff that exists in that can
further,
would be like
they
5 years of.
No, but bro, they had coffee. No, what I'm saying is this. Go back to fucking 5,000 BC. Go to the pyramid times.
Somebody put this could be a prompt for Sora, by the way.
Yeah.
Caveman drinking a Monster energy drink.
Could you imagine giving the pyramid builders a case of Monster? Like what?
That's a Super Bowl spot right there.
There was. All right, man. I know you got to bounce, brother, but amazing episode. We held it down for Bilal. We'll need Bilal's thoughts on whether or not we did a good job. But thank you, listeners. Share episode, leave us a review, all the good stuff. We'll chat to you next week.
Appreciate
peace
you.
out.
Bye.
All right, buddy. Peace out.
Nice one, mate. I'll see you in a bit. Thank you.
Yeah, peace
Bye.
out.